One major difference is that we acknowledge that we are in an economic crisis. We have funding upfront built into our plan for job creation in the immediate future and for long-run investments in the economy. This is something that the Bowles-Simpson plan does not have.
Imagine that it is January of 1945, and most of the economists are worried about whether the economy is going to sink back into depression after the immense stimulus of World War II ends and 12 million men and women in uniform come home, and where are the jobs for them? And President Roosevelt appoints a distinguished commission, and they come back with a blueprint, and the prime question the blueprint asks is, how can we make sure that the debt to GDP ratio is okay in 1965? That's sort of the situation we're in today, not only with the President's Commission, but with 3 other commissions that have gotten a tremendous amount of press attention, sponsored by people sharing the same viewpoint that through some kind of alchemy, this economy can deflate its way into recovery.
The reason that we've had such big deficits is primarily that we've had a weak economy. So that issue of getting the economy going is really should be the foremost issue on the agenda today.
If we got the economy back to a normal rate of unemployment, we would solve the vast majority of our deficit problem.
We in the United States are lucky right now because we've underinvested for 20 years in the public sector. And that means we have a lot of high return investments. To me, it doesn't make any sense that speculators should be taxed at lower rates than those who work for a living. And yet that's what is embedded in our tax code with a special treatment of capital gains.
Social Security is clearly affordable. It is essentially a flat line as a percent of GDP out as far as you can see.
For the past several months, the way this debate was presented by the mainstream press was, everybody knows there's a deficit crisis. Why don't Democrats agree to cut spending? Why don't Republicans agree to raise taxes? That's the debate. Well, it really turns out there are 2 very, very different paths to higher economic growth, recovery from steep recession, and then over time deficit reduction.
Frankly, you know, if we could snap our fingers, make that deficit go away tomorrow, well, the main thing would happen is a lot more people would be unemployed. You'd have to be nuts to want that.
The Fiscal Commission, or the Bowles-Simpson plan, relies overwhelmingly on cuts to discretionary spending, both defense and non-defense. They have $2 trillion worth of cuts to discretionary spending. A lot of this is done on the domestic side. This would mean reducing non-defense discretionary spending to the lowest levels that we've seen in decades. So we strive to reduce the value of tax expenditures, to eliminate them, especially on the corporate side, and to use that revenue for deficit reduction and to fund investments in the economy.